Welcome to Walkouts and Knockouts, brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I'm your host, Johnathan, aka 3-Piece Combo. On my left, we got Mr. Ariel, the fight man himself. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good, brother. I'm so excited for tonight's fight. Let's go. How you doing?
Dude, I'm doing awesome, man. It's a great fight. I mean, the heavyweights, it's always a little bit more interesting when the heavyweights fight, because when they fight, it's always a lot more on the line, right? With these guys, it's always a lot more on the line. And all it takes is one punch. It's all it takes is one for the heavyweights. And we have probably the most undisputed champion and undisputed number one contender with Francis Ngannou, the guy who's been knocking everybody out since losing to the champion. And Stipe Miocic, the greatest heavyweight champion of all time. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a fun one. In the co-main event, unfortunately, we lost that Alexander Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega fight. But we still do have a good fight on our hands for that one. Tyron Woodley versus Vicente Luque. Woodley's obviously coming off a couple of losses, right? He's lost to Gilbert Burns, he lost to Colby Covington, he lost to Kamaru Usman, but now he's taking on a striker, and he's taking on a striker in Vicente Luque, a guy who has, I think, 12 wins, and out of his 12 wins, 11 stoppages. So he's a guy who's going to go out there, kill you. He's a super, super fun fighter to get on. Third fight of the night from the top, we have Sean O'Malley, the hype train, taking on Thomas Almeida, a guy who was at the top of the division for a while, but he's kind of fallen off recently. It's going to be interesting to see if he kind of makes a resurgence against somebody at the level against Sean O'Malley. Jillian Robertson versus Miranda Maverick, that's a good one as well. That's the one that was rescheduled, right? Jillian Robertson, these are both at the bottom of the flyweight division right now as far as the rankings, but they're cracking the top 15. So for these two fighters, if one of them is able to get the win, they probably get a top 10 fight. And if they put 2 or 3 wins together, they're fighting for the belt. That's the significance of this fight, is that 2 or 3 fights from now, these people are going to be fighting for the belt. So right now, bottom of the 15 of the rankings division of 15, but that's going to be a fun one. Kama Worthy versus Jamie Malarkey, that's a fun one as well. That's one that's an interesting clash of style, so you're going to see a lot go at it. To the featured prelims, we lost William Knight, and I was so upset because we were going to have the most ridiculous competitions of just pure physique, because William Knight is just jacked, right? He's a little more small, but he's jacked. And Menifil is a guy who's like an inch or two taller, super jacked himself. That was going to be a fun one. We got Abubakar Nurmagomedov taking on Jared Gooden. Obviously, Khabib is going to be in his corner. It's going to be interesting to see how he fares now, having Khabib in his corner, taking over as that head coach, moving into his career in the UFC. Khabib more as the coach. Modestas Bukauskas, he had a fun knockout win on Fight Island when they was there. He's making a fight as well. Omar Morales, Shane Young, that's a good one. And then we got Abu Azaitar versus Marc-Andre Barriault, and that's a fun one as well. But let's start off with this main event of the evening. We have Francis Ngannou, and he's taking on Stipe Miocic, the consensus greatest heavyweight of all time. Before we get into the fight, I want to talk a little bit about Stipe. How do you feel Stipe's legacy has been, so far? Because he's been the underdog in almost all of his title fights. But although being the underdog, right, he's still the consensus greatest heavyweight of all time. Get into Stipe's legacy so far, and what do you think of his career?
Man, I totally agree that he's got to be, the greatest UFC heavyweight of all time. I mean, it's kind of crazy to me. I think you make a really good point. It's kind of crazy to me that he consistently goes into these title fights as the underdog. And I understand, a lot of these fights have been against guys like Daniel Cormier, Francis Ngannou. He's fought, Junior Dos Santos and all of these, legends of the sport and just absolute monsters in the heavyweight division. But at what point do we start giving Stipe Miocic his respect and his due? Because, man, he's got a phenomenal skill set, one that translates exceptionally well to his division. One of the things, probably his greatest strength is his cardio and the pace that he puts on and how he gets better as fights go on. And when you're talking about the heavyweight division, that is usually a weakness for a lot of these dudes. A lot of them are bigger dudes that slow down as fights go on. They're looking to take you out in the earlier rounds of fights. So it's kind of crazy to me that he's consistently the underdog. If you look at his resume, he's beaten Daniel Cormier twice. He's beaten Francis Ngannou, Junior Dos Santos, Alistair Overeem, Fabricio Verdum, Arlovsky, Mark Hunt. He's beaten anyone who's anyone in that division. So, man, I think if he gets a win tonight, I don't think we can deny him that respect anymore. If he goes into his next fight as an underdog after winning tonight, I think it'll be a little bit absurd at this point.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he won the first fight easily. He's been fighting guys. His resume is absolutely ridiculous. You're talking four of the top six best heavyweights of all time that he's fought, right? Probably that, and he's made it past all of them. You know, he had a couple of setbacks, but those setbacks just made him better, right? He understood where to go, and on top of that, to put all of that on the side, right? He's a firefighter on the side. He does extra things outside of the ring. He just does everything outside of the ring well on top of that. But I agree with you for having the skill set that he does, having the ability to take the fights long into it, outlast his opponents, right? Talking about the last fight against DC, that was the greatest statistical comeback in any or UFC title fight of all time. He was getting dominated, and he changed the game plan, and he was able to come back, right? He was losing that fight handily, and he came back and he won the fight. So Stipe, consensus greatest heavyweight of all time. Let's get into this fight now. Great main event. He's taking on Francis Ngannou, right? And when he first fought Stipe, he was very raw. He wasn't the most polished fighter. He was still kind of fresh into the MMA scene, right? All he knew was just going in and knocking people out. He didn't really have the ring IQ, right? He just had heavy hands, which will take you pretty far if you're Francis Ngannou. It'll take you all the way to a title shot. But when you're going against the greatest of all time, in Stipe Miocic, it's not going to be an easy walk on the park. And Miocic applied his game plan perfectly. But now, since that fight, he's won multiple fights. He's coming in on a heavy streak, right? And for Ngannou, he's finished all of his fights really quickly. I mean, you look at the Rosenstrike fight, 20 seconds. JDS, a minute and 11 seconds. Cain Velasquez, 26 seconds. Curtis Blades, 45 seconds. Add all that up. That's about 4 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes in fight time and some, right? 2 minutes in fight time and some for his last 4 fights. That's nuts. And he's taking on top guys, right? He's taking on people that were great. I mean, Curtis Blades is one of the best wrestlers in the game, right? Best pure wrestlers in the heavyweight division. And he just knocked him out. And now he's going up against a guy who's a little more complete, right? Stipe has it on the feet. He has it on the ground as well. How do you feel like this main event is going to play out?
Man, I don't want to give a prediction, so I'm going to go with, Ngannou. First of all, I just want to put it out there. Ngannou is terrifying. I'm scared of him. I'm scared when I watch him fight because what he does to dudes, he knocks people out in the kind of way that you feel like, dude, is he dead? Did he kill that guy? Like somebody get a doctor in there because it's just horrifying. Every single shot, literally any shot Francis Ngannou throws can put your lights out and take a year off of your life. It's that dangerous fighting him. But man, I just love watching Stipe fight. Elite cardio, elite boxing, great with the combos, mixes up going to the head, the body. He has a very varied attack, and he primarily sticks to his hands, which is what I think is impressive to me. He's just a master with his hands. His boxing is so good. He'll mix in the leg kicks and whatnot to vary up the attack, but generally speaking, it's body, head, body, head, body, head. And he's got a great jab. In the first fight, Stipe did a lot of sticking and moving. There was, some pretty scary hours for him in that first round or so where Ngannou hit him with some shots. But man, it just goes to speak to Stipe Miocic's chin because he took those shots, right? Like nobody else takes shots from Francis Ngannou. It doesn't go to sleep. And Stipe took them. Stipe weathered the early storm, got into the second round, and Francis started to gas. And that's when Stipe's strength started to shine. He started to take over the fight, wear down Francis. And as the fight went on, he just overall, just took control of it. So for Stipe, I think it's a lot of the same game plan coming into this fight. He's got to weather the early storm, wear down Francis, should use his low kicks, much like he did in the first fight. He's got a huge grappling advantage if he chooses to use it. He can take the fight to the ground, especially after that first round, or perhaps even in the first round if you want to tire Francis and sap some of that energy. Look to get the takedown. I think it's important to note that Stipe looked quite a bit slimmer to me in his last fight. And, given that, I still think we cannot discount his power. Everybody wants to talk about Francis Ngannou's power, but Stipe has 6 first-round knockouts to his name. So as long as he can get out of the first round, I think the fight favors him the longer it goes.
Yeah, I mean, Stipe is the master of getting better as the fight goes on, right? He's the master of understanding how to game plan during the fight and how to be malleable, right, during the fight, and being able to change his game plan, right? Because now he's taking on this fight with Ngannou, which he has to have pretty much the same game plan because he's not going to go out there and box with him, right? He's not going to go throw hands with him. And I want to say what's up to Hialeah Bread. I appreciate you checking out the show. I do think he's the greatest heavyweight of all time. But that DC lost derailed that GOAT talk. But Ngannou will put him up there. I think that's true. I think if he beats Ngannou, it's like you can't not, right? You can't not put him up there. But getting into this fight a little bit more, I feel like he's going in there with the same game plan, right? And if Ngannou is prepared for that same game plan, how is Stipe going to change it up this time, right? How is he going to do it this time? And you said it himself. Stipe took a couple of those shots in the first round. So is this a little bit different now because it's a couple of years later, right? Is he a little bit older? Is his chin going to be able to hold up and take those shots like before? Or is one of them going to hurt him this time, right? The second thing to this fight is that Francis is 30 pounds heavier, right? And he's worked on his takedown defense. Obviously, since that last fight, his primary goal has been getting back to that title fight again. And he's done everything right. He's taken all the fights. He even took a fight that he didn't have to against Jairzinho Robertson-Strike. And I really don't think that he had to take that fight. He was already sitting on that number one contendership. And he just kind of put it up for there and he knocked out Robertson-Strike. So Francis knows he's been getting this shot, right? He's been walking to every fight knowing he's getting the shot. The question with him is, how do you judge what you can't see? Because we want to see from Francis, did he improve his takedown defense? Who's tested his takedown defense? He's ended all his fights in less than 2 minutes, right? You want to see, is he able to last to the second round? Nobody could take this man to the second round. And it's not his fault, right? It's not his fault that he can't do these things. But those are the questions going to be asked. And I think you're definitely right. Stipe has a little bit safer of a game plan of how he's going to win this fight. He has more avenues to win this fight because it's not just a one-round fight for him like it feels like it is for Francis. So I think that's going to be a fun one. Obviously, as you know, we're always going to do our picks at the end. So that's our preview for the main event. But let's get into this epic co-main event because we have a former champion, the chosen one, Tyron Woodley, taking on Vicente Luque, a guy who has bricks in his hands, but he knows how to use it like a sniper, right? He's so fun to watch. For Woodley, though, on the other hand, he's coming off of some really bad losses, right? Some losses where he's not been competitive in any of the rounds even, right? I'm not, if mark me if I'm wrong, I don't think he's won a round in the last 3 fights. So, and highly, I 100% agree. I think this could be the fight of the night because you have a guy in Vicente Luque that's going to pressure you, right? And he's gonna walk forward. And you have a guy in Tyron Woodley who kind of, if you look at his last couple of fights, he's preferred to stay on the feet instead of going to the ground. Right. Obviously, when he's been going to the ground, it's usually been him being taken on his ass. But I mean, this time he has the ability maybe to take it to the ground, end up on top. But now you're going up against a guy that, if I'm right, I think he has a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Right. So now, do you want to go play that game with Vicente Luque? He's a guy that, to me, has really good takedown defense. He's able to keep the fight standing. If he gets into the ground, he has a good way of attempting submissions to get up, right? Use it a Kimura to shift their body weight to one side. And even if you're not going to, the Kimura is not going to threaten, it'll shift that weight enough so you can sprawl and get back up, right? So that's going to be a fun thing to see. But for the co-main event, man, this is going to be a fun one. What do you see? How did you see this fight going down watching the film? Like, how did you see this one going?
So what I see when I watch Vicente Luque is, first of all, I'm very impressed with his overall game. He's a very well-rounded fighter. The stand-up is very good. He has really good hands. He's a really good counter striker. And when he counter strikes, he throws multiple strikes for counters. It's combos. It's the leg. It's the hooks. It's the uppercuts. It's the straight right. It's whatever. Like, he's not a one-trick pony by any means. He has a very varied attack. So it's a dangerous fight for Woodley. But I think it's dangerous for Luque as well. I think one of Luque's biggest weapons is the calf kick. He throws a lot of calf kicks and a lot of low kicks, and that's very dangerous against a wrestler. I know that, you made a really good point when talking about Woodley and saying that in his last few fights, he's gone away from his wrestling roots and become much more of a stand-up fighter, a guy who wants to knock you out. The problem is, though, he's primarily a counter fighter on the feet. He doesn't initiate the action frequently. So when I look at these two fighters, I kind of feel like it's a counter striker against a guy who can initiate the pace, but is more of a counter striker in himself.
Right.
So I get the talk that it could turn out to be a fight of the night. These are both very talented fighters, but I kind of lean towards, I don't want to, it's not going to be a boring fight, but I'm not, I kind of feel like we get more of a 3D chess match where if Woodley's smart, he gets back to his wrestling roots. If he can get Luque's respect with, one of those big power shots, he doesn't even have to knock him out, but then go in and use the takedown, or at the very least, the threat of the takedown. That should neutralize a lot of what Luque does and gets him thinking about defending the takedown, which traditionally makes strikers more one-dimensional. But as far as Luque goes, like I said, great calf kick, great hands, good counters, very technical, just like really good technique in his stand-up. He's generally pretty composed. He seems very calm in there, but he can get into, kind of like barn burner type fights. I feel like his takedown defense is solid, but it's not like elite. And so if there's one area where I feel like Tyron Woodley can take advantage, if he's smart, that should be the area. He should look to get this fight to the ground and, just maul Vicente Luque, get back to his roots, because he has an extremely strong wrestling base. And if he can get back to the fighter that we had seen a little bit earlier in his career, I think he can win this fight. I think the odds are not necessarily indicative of what might happen.
Absolutely, because if you take the classical approach of striker versus wrestler, right? Typically the wrestler comes out on top, right? And, like you said, Luque, he has decent takedown defense, but he's not the best because he kind of knows he can fall back on his Brazilian jiu-jitsu roots, right? Which is kind of a blessing and a curse, because no matter what, when you're working off your back, even if you're attempting subs, the judges don't really put it that way, right? Unless you do a massive damage, you get him on a triangle, you land some elbow, something like that. I want to thank Hialeah for talking about the chess match and putting that in my brain, because I saw the comment, I forgot to put it up, so I appreciate that. But this could be a fight like that, could be a chess match, because like you said, Luque, his engagements, right? He'll throw that outside low kick, he'll throw that inside leg kick, he'll throw that jab. But he'll usually wait for you to throw the jab, to throw his jab a little bit quicker, right? And he'll beat you to the punch, right? And if you look at his fight against Barberena is a guy that took some heavy shots. Did you get to watch that fight?
I did, yeah. Sorry, I was muted.
Okay, my God. Because I don't think I watched that fight live, like when it happened, but I was rewatching it when watching film for him. And he was, he won the first round, I think, right? Definitely lost the second round. Definitely was losing the third round. And then he goes and he throws a flying knee, catches him again with another knee, puts him down, and finishes the fight with like 8 seconds to go. And I think it's like 8th all time in the latest stoppages in UFC history. So he has that killer mindset, right? Because of almost all of his wins come by finishes, whether it's,
he's a finisher. Absolutely.
He'll get you down. And even if he doesn't decide to, finish you with ground and pound, he's good enough on the ground on top of you to know when you put yourself in a compromising position. And he loves that Darce choke, doesn't he? He loves to use that Darce choke, and he'll wrap you up, and he'll bring you down, and he'll roll with it. And then once he gets you down, that's it. So that's going to be a fun fight to see. Like you said, I don't think the odds are indicative of what it is, but odds makers remember the last 3 fights. So for Woodley, the last 3 fights have been absolute trash. For Luque, last 3 fights, he's been fighting good competition and he's been winning, right? But now he's taking a massive step up. It's going to be interesting to see if he's able to step up. It's going to be interesting to see if Woodley is able to stay off the chopping block and then doesn't end up in Bellator like Yoel Romero. But Bellator has...
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, buddy.
No, you first.
I was just going to say the one thing with regards to your point about the odds makers taking into account his last 3 fights mostly when making the odds for these fights. You and I were talking before the stream, and those last 3 fights all came against wrestlers, right? He fought Usman, Burns, and his last fight was, remind me, Covington. Covington. And so, I don't know if, like, Luque is a pretty different fighter from those guys. And if you go back and look at Woodley's last few fights where he fought guys who are primarily strikers, or at least prefer to strike, he's had success in those fights. So does that mean that this fight will play out the same way? No, not necessarily, but something to consider.
Absolutely. He's not going up against a guy that's going to try to put him on his ass, right? He doesn't have to worry about being taken down as much. But now he's going against a striker, and that's going to be a fun one. But let's get into the third fight, man, because we have somebody who's had a hype train. He had an amazing hype train, but some leg kicks chopped down that hype train, right? Cheeto Vera chopped down that hype train. Let's get to Sean O'Malley, man. He's a fun fighter inside the ring and outside the ring. A lot of people have turned on him since the last fight, but what do you think, man? Are you on the O'Malley hype train? How do you feel about him?
I'm on the hype train. I'm not ready to jump off based on one bad round, essentially, of fighting in a young fighter's career, right? How old is he? Is he 25, 26? Like
Yes.
he's still in MMA years. That is, he's not in his prime yet. I think it's absolutely accurate to still consider him a prospect. I'm not ready to jump off the train. He's got an absolute missile of a straight right hand. He's really creative with his kicks, uses tons of movement, which is just, it's hard to deal with, right? It's much easier to deal with a guy who stands in front of you. He's moving around a lot. He throws all kinds of different strikes. So he has a very varied striking arsenal. He blew out his, was it his knee in the Marlon Vera fight?
It was like his peroneals. I think they his peroneal nerve,
peroneals?
his peroneal. It's like that front muscle, that front calf muscle.
Okay.
Right. It's responsible for holding your foot up.
Got
they kicked it, and his foot was like floppy, so he was like landing on his ankle all the time. So like it's like on the front of your shin, that muscle on the front of your shin. And he got kicked out, so that nerve died for the moment, right? And he just couldn't use it. And if you watch that fight, he like rolls his ankle because he doesn't have control over his foot being able to like plant it, right? So he was landing really weird. His movement is his style, like you said. That's what makes Sean O'Malley so dangerous. His movements, his feints, and his reads. Right, he's really good of just setting everything up. If you watch that Wineland fight, he set up that perfect. I think it was a fake uppercut, and then he goes over the top.
Yeah,
right. Nuts, absolutely nuts. Super sharp. Right, it kind of got overshadowed by the Cody Garbrandt knockout because that was on the same night. But that was if like he said, it was technically a better strike. Right, it was a good one to get into. But yeah, I'm definitely on the hype train as well. He's 26. I looked it up. He's 26 years old. He's still about, in modern MMA, I would say he's 6 years away from entering his prime.
And you can't, it's irresponsible to count a guy out based on one bad round. Like, guys have off nights. Marlon Vera's a beast. The low kicks and all of the, what he used to really chop down and finish O'Malley with are like, it's something that he's susceptible to. But I mean, again, look, I think that's what makes this fight so interesting, is because Thomas Almeida is a Muay Thai style striker, and a heavy part of his striking arsenal are the low kicks, the calf kicks, the kicks, just it's part of Muay Thai. It's what you're drilled to do from a young age. So I think it's a really interesting stylistic matchup, man. I think this is a really good fight, and I'm not ready to jump off of the Thomas Almeida boat either. I know he's struggled recently, but this could be a fight that, plays into his strengths.
Yeah, I mean, he's going against a guy who's a technical striker as well, albeit a kind of an unusual one. Kryptonite, he said he's on the hype mileage train. What's up, Kryptonite? Appreciate you checking us out this week. And High Learbread said Sean, he trained with him back at the lab. So it's gonna be interesting to see if your prediction is right and if he's gonna get this finish. I agree with you. I think he gets it. Dang, I can't give up the prediction already. But hey, whatever. A little teaser. I think he might get the finish in this one, right? But getting into this fight, like you said, it's technically a really good fight. I think what makes this matchup so hard for Almeida, though, is that he's so traditional in his striking, right? He keeps his boxing very square, and when you're striking against a guy like O'Malley, who kind of sets up things from slightly off angles, right? His movement isn't very orthodox, right? He's very relaxed. He's kind of in there just dancing with you, and he'll throw like offbeat pops, right? He won't just land, and as he lands, he'll throw it, right? He'll kind of throw it like on the offbeat to kind of throw off what that dance is going on, right? So he's a kind of a very unique striker. He's, like Max Holloway-esque almost, right? Where he can throw anything from anywhere. And he's really good with the feints as well. He's good at setting things up. I like Almeida. I'll be honest with you. I think the problem with him is that he's just taken a lot of damage lately, right? He's consumed a lot of damage. Like I said, he's a great technical fighter, right? He's good on the feet. He has the ability to knock you out. I mean, the dude came in, 17-0, 16-0 in the UFC, and he won his first 6 in the UFC as well. I want to take a look at the exact count for that. First 5 wins in the UFC were by knockout, excluding one, which was actually a fight of the night, which he doubled up the output on his opponent. So his first 5 fights had performance of the night bonuses. I mean, that's a lot of 50K checks right there, right? But now he's fallen off. When you looked at it, he's lost against Cody Garbrandt, right? Jimmy Rivera, Rob Font, and then he takes a couple of years off, and he comes back and he loses to Jonathan Martinez in a decision. And it's like, is this guy on the back end of his career? And it's hard to see what's going to be going on. And I mean, like I said, I feel like this is a fight where O'Malley is going to be able to set something up a little bit easier, right? Because he's coming at these off angles. He's used to going up against traditional guys, and for Almeida, he's going to have a tough puzzle to figure out. So that's going to be an interesting one to see as well. Let's get into this next fight a little bit.
Real quick, sorry, buddy. Right before we do that, can you put up Hilaire Bread's last comment with the size difference? I think that's a really good point. O'Malley only has a 2-inch reach advantage, but I think it comes into play more so than just being a 2-inch reach advantage in this particular matchup because, like you said, there are questions about Almeida's chin, right? And it's going to be tested against O'Malley. Almeida has a tendency to kind of like rush in and that's that Muay Thai style. He gets into berserker mode sometimes and he rushes in recklessly. He can get caught, right? O'Malley has the reach advantage. He's got a killer straight right like we talked about. So, and O'Malley fights longer than he actually is. He uses distance extremely well. And I could absolutely see him catching Almeida on the way in. So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, man, we got some really educated fight fans that watch our show, man, and I really appreciate all you guys checking us out. It makes the show a lot better. So, hi, Leah, Kryptonite, Young Assassin. I know you check out our show a lot as well, so I appreciate all you guys checking us out. David as well is another going to guys. Obviously, my girlfriend's dad. Appreciate you, my girlfriend. Everybody watching it, right? But let's get into this next fight because this is going to be a fun one, right? Jillian Robertson taking on Miranda Maverick. Fun stylistic fight because you have somebody who's a young kind of raw striker in Miranda Maverick, and she's taking on Jillian Robertson, who's very sloppy on the feet, right? She just her hands are just a precursor for her to get a shot and try to get this fight to the ground. How do you see this one going down? Like, how do you see these fighters matching up against each other?
So I feel like Robertson's striking is kind of rudimentary. She wants to get the fight to the ground. She's got a good double leg, good trips from the clinch. Aggressive on top or off of her back, looking to finish fights, both with submissions, with strikes. She was pretty handily dominated against Tyler Santos in her last fight, but Tyler Santos is a beast. She needs to be the aggressor when grappling, especially in this matchup. I think you made a good point about Maverick's striking. She is a little bit raw, but there's talent there. Like, I think she puts her combos together very nicely, good arsenal of strikes. She mixes it up with her hands, her kicks. It'll be key for her to, finish combos with kicks as opposed to starting her combos with kicks, because that's where you're more susceptible to being taken down. If you can lead with punches, you're less often than not going to suffer a takedown at the end of it. So, if the fight gets to the ground, she also has a solid ground game. I think she's all around like a pretty solid fighter. I'm very curious to see what happens with Maverick's career going forward. And I think this is an interesting fight. It's a good test for her.
This is a good test for both of these ladies, right? They're good prospects. They're both coming in pretty young. One's 26, one's 23, right? So they're still pretty young as far as these fighters go. And they're, like I said, they're both at the bottom of the rankings of the flyweight division. 2 or 3 wins can put them at the top fighting for the belt, right? This is a division that moves very, very fast. So, like you said, it's perfect, right? Jillian Robertson, she uses her hands really just to set up her takedown. She's not really good on the feet. She tends to get hit a lot, right? She's not the best defensive striker, but she'll try to run into you. She'll try to get you in the clinch and then try to work the weight of the down. But as far as for Maverick, like you said, she has good striking. She's starting to understand how to put her combos together. If she doesn't present her hips as much, and if she's able to keep this fight standing on the feet, I think this is going to be a pretty long night for Jillian Robertson, because, obviously the knockout power isn't always there in that division, but to take a lot of damage, they take a lot of damage in that division because they don't get knocked out, right? They'll suffer a lot more beating on the face. So it's going to be interesting to see. The primary question is if Jillian Robertson can get the fight to the floor, because if that happens, then she has a huge advantage. Maverick is okay off her back, right? She can probably mitigate some of the damage, but it's not going to be a great fight for her. I think she has to keep this fight standing. Let's get into the opener, because we have a kind of a fun fight, right? We have Kama the Death Star Wordy taking on Jamie Malarkey. It's honestly a kind of a sleeper fight, right? This is one of these fights that can turn into the fight of the night if it goes long enough. What do you feel like? How do you feel like these fighters match up with each other?
So Kama, I'm interested in this one as well. I think Kama's fun, man. He's got a really heavy right kick, good speed. He uses it to counter very well. He's always looking to counter. He's always, anything you throw at him, he throws right back at you. which I think is something that a lot of guys don't do. I like that about him. He likes to chip away with body shots, can overcommit sometimes on strikes, which makes him susceptible to getting taken down, which actually could end up being a problem in this fight because Malarkey wants to get the fight to the ground. Probably he's got solid takedowns from the clinch, has a tendency to reach though for the low kick, which is what makes this fight dangerous for him, because if he's reaching on the low kick, then Kama can set up the high kick, and he can knock him out. So yeah, I think it's going to be important for Malarkey to look to initiate the clinch and look for takedowns from there. Kama's a pretty quick guy, fast twitch, good reaction time. So if it's not a perfectly timed double leg from Malarkey, Kama will probably see it coming, might have time to react and stuff the takedown. So for Malarkey, close the distance, don't get clipped, don't reach for the low kicks, and initiate the clinch, get the takedown. For Kama, keep the distance. You're faster. You should have an advantage on the feet. So that's the game plan for him.
Yeah, and both of these guys are still kind of on the up and comer. Kama Worthy's kind of a late rookie, right? He started his UFC career kind of late. Only made his debut, I think, 2 years ago in a fight where he was a plus 1,000 underdog. I was watching that fight live. I was like, holy shit! Like, oh my god! Like, he was a plus 1,000. He got the knockout over his friend. Is actually one of his sparring buddies, and he high fived him in the ring. They were chilling or whatever, and he knocked him out cold, which is savage, man. Kama Worthy. That's how he made a name for himself. But then he had that win against Luis Pena. The violent Bob Ross, right? He got that guillotine choke, but then he lost to Otman Izatar. Obviously, he's undefeated. I think he the guy that tried to sneak some stuff into the UFC bubble in Dubai.
Did he? I know he was a K1 champion, I believe, but I don't know. I don't know about him sneaking. What did he sneak in?
I think we don't know yet. Like, nobody knows. But what happened is they cut their wristbands off,
right?
And they had the Fight Island bubble. And yeah, it's this guy. It's him. So they had this Fight Island bubble where nobody's allowed to go outside of the bubble. It's very restricted. They're in Abu Dhabi, right? It's a very big thing. Everywhere in the world is in a pandemic right now, so they're not able to do events. So for Abu Dhabi to have this locked off arena where everybody's just in this bubble, it's very, very risky to bring somebody in, because if one person comes in and everybody's just in there, right, it can get spread around, stuff like that. So he cut his wristband off. He gave it to somebody outside. The person comes in, right? He starts scaling the balconies of the hotel that they're staring at. So he's going from balcony to balcony. He has a pouch with him with something. Nobody knows what's inside. I don't think we know what's inside yet, right? But he has something in this bag. And like I said, he gave the wristband to his buddy outside, and his buddy comes outside, scaling the side of the hotel. He's going from window to window. If he falls, he's dead, right? If he falls, he's dead. I think he gets to the room, he gives him a bag, and then they find out, right? Everybody finds out what happens, and then he gets cut.
So we don't know yet what it is, though.
Nobody knows what it is. He said alcohol. I wouldn't think it's alcohol. I don't think on a fight day he would get alcohol. And you're at Abu Dhabi, dude. Like, if you're there, you could just ask for alcohol.
He might have been sneaking in that old John Jones pre-fight.
I think that's what I think. It's either that or like weight cutting shit. You know what I mean? Like an IV or something to help him rehydrate from the weight cut. Right. Or maybe that was just a really dedicated Uber Eats driver. And they were just trying to, you got ordered something that really couldn't be there. He wanted some McDonald's or something, right? Plug the show. But yeah, that's a fun one. But yeah, getting back to the Kama Worthy fight, like you said, this is going to be a fight where Kama's going to have to try to keep it standing up. I don't know if he's going to be able to, right? Because 50% takedown defense, okay, but you'll get down one every two. And once he's on his back, he doesn't offer much off of his back. And if Malarkey's able to actually take it down and impose his will, I think this is a fight where we'll see kind of what happened with like Derek Brunson versus Kevin Holland, right? So I think maybe something like that happens for that. But let's get into our picks, because, man, we broke down every one of the fights. If you have missed any one of the fights, we'll actually write down here. I try to keep the topic that we're on, so you can always go through and check out all the fights before, right? But let's get into our picks. Let's start with the that fifth fight we just talked about, and then we'll work our way up to the co-main event. So let's get into the odds, because I want to see the odds for this one. Jamie Malarkey taking on Kama Worthy. Malarkey is a plus 105. Worthy is a minus 110. So it's basically a pick-em fight. Who are you going to go with, and what is the way of winning?
I'm gonna go with Worthy. I think we get a really entertaining fight. Could be a split decision or at the very least like a 2 rounds to 1 type fight. Malarkey can easily win this one by getting the fight to the ground and dominating from there. Like you said, Kama doesn't have a ton off of his back. Um, but I just think Kama's a better striker. I'm a striker in nature, and so I'm going to lean striker most of the time in these kind of situations. So I'm going to go with Kama Worthy by decision.
Okay, fair point. Fair point. I think this is Malarkey's fight to lose. I think this is a fight where he's definitely has the more favorable skill set, right? If he's able to take it down and get him down, he'll win this fight just on points. I do see danger in Worthy, right? I do think he has the ability to end this fight. He does have heavy hands. He's a guy that'll either win by knockout or lose by knockout. That's the thing with him, right? He'll put himself in a little bit of danger. I'm gonna go with Malarkey for this one. I think he's gonna be able to get him at least in the clinch, right? Wear him down. You know, we know that Kama Worthy was a guy that fought a little bit in that lighter weight class as well. I think he fought at heavyweight before, heavyweight, right? Lighter weight class. He fought at featherweight before, and now he's working back up to lightweight. So I think Malarkey's going to be able to take him to the cage, bring him down, just make it a grinded out fight, make it a tough fight for him. Let's get into the next fight. We have Miranda Maverick taking on Jillian Robertson. Odds on that one, we're looking at, where are they? There they are. Plus 145 minus for Jillian Robertson, minus 170 for Miranda Maverick. That line is actually tightened up a little bit. How do you see that one going?
I'm going to go with Maverick here. I think she has a large, and I mean like a pretty wide gap in the striking area. And if she can keep the fight on the feet again, I just think it favors her tremendously. She's got a decent ground game from the top as well. So perhaps that's something that could come into play. I just think she has more avenues to win this fight, whereas Robertson just kind of has to, get in there without getting clipped on her way in, get the fight to the ground and try to win that way. But I'm higher on Maverick. I'm going to go with her in this fight.
Yeah, I think she's on the way up, right? She's trending in the better direction. She has a little bit more growth to her game, so she has more to go from here. Everybody watching as well, I want you guys to give your predictions in the comments just to see what you guys have if you're taking any of these fights. You can just throw a name out there. I mean, who knows? Maybe you get it right. You got a 50-50 chance, right? But yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I think Miranda Maverick gets it done. I think it's going to be a decision win where maybe we see her getting taken down, but it's too late in the round, and she's able to mitigate the damage of Jillian Robertson on top, right? And like you said, I think the significance or the difference on the feet is just massive. Maverick has a huge advantage on the feet, and she should be able to take care of that pretty easily. Let's get into this next one because we have a heavy favorite, Sean O'Malley, minus 330, taking on Thomas Almeida, a guy who's, like I said, was at the top of the division, but now he's fallen off. Plus 260 for Thomas Almeida, minus 330 for Sean O'Malley. How do you see that one going down?
This one I think should be closer in the betting odds. I think that O'Malley, like we touched on earlier, O'Malley's weaknesses kind of play into Thomas Almeida's strengths, but at the same time, some of Thomas Almeida's strengths in that he rushes in and he'll get caught sometimes. He's at a reach disadvantage here. Those play into Sean O'Malley's strengths with his missile straight right hand and all of that. So I think it's a closer fight than the odds indicate, but I'm gonna go with O'Malley via knockout or TKO in the second round.
Yeah, that was my pick too. I think that after losing that fight, right, kind of getting TKO'd, I guess you can say, by Chito Vera, he has something to prove, right? He was on the hype train. You know what you are. You was being sold as the next Conor McGregor, basically, right? So I feel like, like Kryptonite saying, he's going to want to look back to get into that win column. He's going to want to look to get back that hype train, right? There's a lot of people, he's a streamer. He does a lot of YouTube. He does a lot of things outside of the UFC to kind of make himself as a brand. And for him to have that audience and lose it, right, it's kind of sucks. And if that audience kind of turns on him, it sucks as well. So I think Sean comes out. I think he gets a second round TKO. I think he pieces him up, man. I think he's good. I think he might get hit, but his footwork is so defensive, it's going to be hard for him to get hit. But let's get into the co-main event of the evening. The chosen one, Tyron Woodley, the former UFC welterweight champion of the world, taking on Vicente Luque, the guy who was on the Ultimate Fighter. And I was like, how did this guy lose on the Ultimate Fighter? Who was the winner? Kamaru Usman.
Gotten a lot better. He's gotten a lot better, though. He's improved a ton.
Oh, absolutely. He's grown so much as a fighter. He's still only 28 years old. He's still only 28 years old. Dude is a highlight reel already, and his goal, he's talked about it, is actually to be in the UFC Hall of Fame, which is very, very interesting. to say that as your goal instead of becoming a champion.
Aim
How do you
high.
think this fight's going down? Go ahead.
I'm going to go with Tyron Woodley here. I'm going to, I know that Luque is a favorite, but I've just got a feeling, man. I feel like when Tyron Woodley fights guys that are primarily strikers, like we talked about earlier, he has historically had success. Now, I could absolutely see Vicente Luque winning this fight. He's got all the momentum. Tyron Woodley's on the opposite side of that spectrum, the momentum spectrum. But I've just got a feeling that Woodley's going to be able to get this fight to the ground, and it might be a little bit of a slog. I don't want to say boring again, but maybe a little bit of a slog. I'm going to go with Woodley by unanimous decision. I think he dominates this fight by taking it to the ground and getting the W.
Yeah, fair point. If we're able to see Woodley go back to those wrestling roots, I think for sure he has a heavy chance of winning this fight. We haven't seen him do that lately, like Kryptonite saying Woodley lost his edge lately, but we talked about a little bit earlier, he's gone against a lot of wrestlers, right? Usman has 100% takedown defense in the UFC. Nobody's ever taken this guy down, right? So if you're trying to implement an offensive game plan against him, there's not really much there.
It's hard, yeah.
Yeah, and against Covington and Burns, you're going against a guy who's a great wrestler in Covington and a guy who's going to sub you off your back in Burns, right? You don't want to take any of those guys out. But Vicente Luque is a little bit more raw on the ground, a little more raw on the ground, right? Not as good as a wrestler. He's more of a stand and bang kind of guy. He'll wait for you to draw out your offense and kind of counter strike with you. So, like you said, this can either go two ways. It'll go where we see Luque pressure the whole fight, and we'll actually see Tyron Woodley actually open up because he has some strikes coming his way that he can counter with. Or we see Luque come out, Tyron Woodley's hesitant. He tries to maybe shoot, but he's always off his back foot. He's not pressuring. So it's going to be hard for him to get a takedown while on his back foot, and Luque having all that space to work and to back up. I think Luque gets this fight done. He's a finisher, 11 of 12 fights. He's finished. I think he gets done. I'm going to say late knockout. I'm going to say early third round. I think he gets a TKO. I think he backs Woodley up to the fence. Woodley throws an overhand right. Luque likes to counter an overhand right. I think sometimes with a left hook or a left body shot, right? I could be wrong with that, but I think that's what he does. Or even, dip to the side and throw his own overhand right. He'll switch stances as well. I think Luque gets it done. I think it's a third round stoppage. I think 9-1 are the odds on a third round stoppage as well. If you check out the 5 Reasons to Bet show that I did with J-Rod yesterday, he actually gave us a way to hedge your bet and try to get a stoppage from Luque, and you actually get your money back either way. So check that out. See if you get, if Luque gets a stoppage in the fight, no matter what, you get some money. So check out that 5 Reasons to Bet. Let's get into this main event of the evening. We have the UFC World Heavyweight Championship. Stipe Miocic is defending his belt against the Predator, dude. Francis Ngannou, the scariest, probably like you said, the scariest dude in the world. But he's so nice. He's so soft-spoken, dude. Like he'll talk to you like he's so kind to you. And like if he was just a phone call, you would know this guy could tear your head off. But let's get into this fight. You can go ahead and make your prediction first. I'm going to go ahead and I'll counter your point. I'll see if we have the same one.
Real quick, I just want to say that reminds me a little bit of Anderson Silva. A lot of those guys that are absolute killers in the octagon are the nicest dudes and the most soft-spoken dudes outside of it. And I just think that's funny. It makes me root for those guys more. But in this case, I'm going with Stipe. The champ doesn't get enough respect. I think it's wash, rinse, repeat from the last fight between him and Francis Ngannou. I think if Stipe can get out of the first round with his head still on his shoulders, as the fight goes on, it favors Stipe. The pressure, the cardio, the boxing. If he wants the wrestling, I think he can take over this fight as soon as they get out of the first 5 minutes, maybe the first couple minutes of the second round. We saw Francis slow down a lot in the last fight, so I'm going to go with Stipe via decision.
Yeah, I think Stipe definitely has more avenues to win this fight, right? He's coming in, like you said, he has the ability to implement that wrestling game plan, get it into the clinch, kind of get a lot of work from there. For Francis, I think it's knockout or bust, right? Because for him to win a decision, I think he might have to get like a knockdown in a couple rounds, and maybe Stipe survives that, but nobody's going to survive a knockdown from Francis. So I think Francis has to win this fight by knockout no matter what. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go against my gut instinct. My gut instinct is saying Stipe because, I mean, we just saw it with Derek Brunson, right? We had a striker going up against a wrestler, and the wrestler ended up winning. I'm gonna go ahead and say Francis gets it done. I think he's probably done enough in the last couple of years to understand what he has to improve in the octagon. Nobody was able to push him out of the first round. That's not his fault. We'll have to see what we see. I think this is a Brian Ortega kind of thing where he's, we see the changes without seeing it happen in the octagon, right? We'll see it kind of happen. I'm going to take Francis Ngannou. I'm going to take second round TKO. Kryptonite said he has the same thing as well, so I'm going with him. But yeah, man, let's get into this main parlay of the night. We have a couple of fights outside of here on the main event. What are you going for your parlay of the night? Are you going for a perfect pick, or going for putting a couple fights together?
I'm putting 3 fights together, match winner straight up. I'm going Stipe, slight underdog. I'm going Tyron Woodley, underdog. I think 2-1 last I checked. And then I'm going Sugar Sean O'Malley. I just think he's a better fighter than Thomas Almeida. And I think he gets it done. So those 3 just to win.
Right. Just straight out decision or straight out victories. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good one. I think it's very dangerous with that Woodley fight in there though. Right. That's the only thing, but that's what gives the odds just amazing because you have 2 underdogs in there. Right. So that makes that a great underdog fight. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to actually go into the prelims. Right. I like Abubakar Nurmagomedov. He's minus 240, but he's going up against a guy that, is able to be taken down. And Abubakar is really good at just doing it everywhere. He has a couple of knockouts. He has a couple of subs. He has a couple of decisions. I think this time he gets a decision win. I'm going to put him in there. And then I'm going to put Sean O'Malley by TKO. So Abubakar Nurmagomedov by decision. Sean O'Malley by TKO. Put those 2 together. I think you get a good parlay there as well. Let's get into fight of the night prediction, man. Who do you see getting fight of the night and getting this done?
I'm going to go with, I actually didn't consider this beforehand. I'm going to go with Almeida and O'Malley. I think we get an exciting 2-ish rounds, but a really good 2-ish rounds between 2 guys who want to keep it on the feet and are going to bang. Almeida's an aggressive guy. O'Malley is fun as hell. So I'm going to go with that for my fight of the night.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. I think we have a couple of potential ones in the fights as well. If you want to see a heavy knockout, right, check out Alonzo Menefiel for the first round. He's great in the first round. After that, he'll gas out, right? I think that's a good one. The Shane Young versus Omar Morales fight, that's quite an interesting one as well. I think that one could go well. But if you're looking at the main card, I think probably the best fight is that going to be that Sean O'Malley or Thomas Almeida, because those are 2 guys that'll go and they'll strike, right? Sean O'Malley will set you up a little bit more, but Almeida will try to throw a little bit more volume at you, match that volume. But I think, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say that O'Malley fight as well. But if you're looking for another one, check that Alonzo Menefiel fight, see if he gets that first round knockout. Just keep your eyes on that one as well. Let's get into the sleeper one. Is there any other sleepers on this fight that you want to check out?
This is why I do the show. I wait to hear your sleepers, buddy. What you got?
Yeah, like I said, that sleeper one, that Shane Young versus Omar Morales, I think that one's going to be a pretty fun fight. But on the main card, yeah, not main card. That's not sleeper, right? Yeah, I'm going to go with the Shane Young, Omar Morales. I think that's going to be a fun fight to watch. I think it's a fight that they kind of cancel out each other's strengths, so they're going to have to stand and bang and try to get that work. So I think that's going to be a fun one to check out. Is there any final thoughts do you have on this card, man? Because this was a great show.
Yeah, I think we've covered just about everything. Again, super excited for the main event. The top 3 fights on the card, though, main event, co-main, and the fight before that, I think are all fights that have ramifications as far as within their divisions and just all around being exciting fights, interesting stylistic matchups. All of them have questions, and I could see any of those 6 fighters winning in their respective fights. So it's going to be exciting. Those are the 3 fights I'm looking forward to, and let's get it. I'm excited.
Yeah, man, we have a great card coming up. Even a great month. I think next Friday we have Bellator coming up as well. That's going to be continuing with that light heavyweight Grand Prix. You have Yoel Romero taking on Rumble Johnson. Like, holy, that's going to be a fun fight. That's going to be a fun fight to watch. Hey, maybe we do a surprise 10-minute show just to talk about the names on there, see new what's up, right? But that's going to be a fun one. Obviously, in the NBA world, I'm sure everybody here is a Heat fan, so we got some fun basketball coming up. We got Oladipo joining us as well. As you know, me and Ariel, we do post-game shows. We're part of the post-game team with Royal, Gad, Brian, all those guys up over there. So if you don't check out the basketball stuff, which is pretty impossible if you're on this channel, right? Check us out there as well. You got the shoot around. Talk about the shoot around a little bit.
Shoot around is a short 140-second video that Gadiel Cartagena and I like to do just to give you a little extra Miami Heat vitamins to take in the morning because we don't really see any of that on the timeline, right? Everything's on YouTube or in podcast form. So if you just want something quick to update you on what's going on with the team, the pulse of the team, whatever's going on in the rumors, maybe a game night preview, you can check that out every game day morning. It'll either be on my Twitter page, so at Ariel TS2 or at Gadiel Cartagena. One of us will post it every game day morning.
Yeah, man. I mean, you guys do great work. You put the game into 2 minutes. It's real easy to listen to. It's fun to listen to as well. But we got a great fight night tonight, man. Like I said, UFC Heavyweight Championship on the line. Stipe Miocic against the most dangerous man on the planet, Francis Ngannou. Great co-main event with Vicente Luque, Tyron Woodley, Sean O'Malley looking to get that hype train back on the roll. Plus, a lot of good fights that are that have implications in their divisions, in their respective careers. Thanks, you guys, for checking out Walkouts, and brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We got Mr. Ariel Atias. I'm Jonathan Ramlakan, and I hope you guys enjoy the fight.